Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. I am your host Keith Crockford and today I am recording this podcast live from Gozo and I am chatting with the lovely Rachel Vassallo. Hello Rachel.
Hi Keith.
So Rachel is the dive director at the dive school that we use, and we are out here now with a Bucket Lister group learning to scuba dive. So I thought it would be a really great opportunity to sit Rachel down and just talk about scuba diving from someone with as much experience as Rachel's got. So, Rachel, do you want to start off by talking through your dive journey in terms of, most people, they go traveling, learn to scuba dive, progress to become an instructor and then travel around the world. Is that what happened with you?
So, kind of, yes. But actually, when I went traveling, I never wanted to scuba dive. I hated the sea. I hated the ocean. I was terrified of swimming and being somewhere where I couldn't stand up, although I can swim. I just didn't enjoy it at all. What I did was, I had a friend who worked at a dive shop and she was kind of like, look, you're in Koh Tao. You can't come to Koh Tao and not try scuba diving. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll give it a go. I literally knelt down in the swimming pool, started breathing underwater and fell in love with it immediately. And I think I'd probably done about 2 or 3 skills and I was already asking my instructor how I became an instructor. So I quickly kind of progressed. I did lots and lots of dives on Koh Tao itself. I went to Indonesia, got more experience there. Came back to Malta and did some dives here. And I loved seeing the difference in the different locations and regions. And then that's kind of when I decided I'm going to do my dive master. So I did my dive master, then did my instructor course and managed to land a job quite quickly as a head instructor. Which is where I realized I love teaching. And then I wanted to share my passion with teaching new instructors how to be instructors. So I became an instructor trainer. And here we are now.
And where have you worked as a dive instructor? Because obviously you are Maltese. We're now in Malta or Gozo. The funny story is I've been coming to this dive centre for the last 20 years. And I remember 2019 when I got a random phone call that came up on my phone from a Maltese number introducing themselves as Rachel, and you just bought the dive centre and we were your first group that were coming out the week after.
Yes.
And that was the first time we had. And it was quite nerve-wracking for me, really, because when you've got used to something for the last 16 years and you know how everything works, then all of a sudden you get a phone call to say, it's all changing. And you're like, oh my God, but I will give you this. It has certainly changed for the better. And we love coming out here now. We don't want any other groups. You can't have any other travel companies using
just
us.
You.
Just us. We'll fall out if we start seeing our competitors using over here. Did you train as an instructor whilst you were in Malta?
I actually did all my training in Koh Tao.
All of it?
So all the way up to instructor train. And one of the good things about being in Thailand, and especially Koh Tao, is because of the high volume of especially backpackers that go to the island specifically for scuba diving. I was able to get a lot of experience, teach a lot of courses with students of varying abilities, varying cultures as well. And that really allowed me to adapt and also be flexible as well in my training. And I kind of wanted to come back to Europe because firstly I heard, funnily enough, later on in life that Gozo and Malta was the first or second best place to dive in Europe. And also I have a passion for shipwrecks, and Malta and Gozo have a lot of shipwrecks.
Yeah.
And here it's more about the topography. So like the rock structures, the caves, the amazing bright blue out towards the ocean. And again, it's a perfect place for all levels of diver. You can be an open water diver at 18 meters, diving the same dive site as a technical diver at 100 meters. You just dive to different depths and plan different dives.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's what I love about Gozo and why I come back time and time again. I've dived in the Red Sea, I've dived in the Maldives now, and the aquatic life is amazing when you go to those destinations. But you kind of feel like it's a bit samey. Like you jump in the water, oh look, I'm in a tropical fish tank, and then in the afternoon you jump in the water again and you see the same things again. Whereas that's not the case on Gozo, is it? Gozo doesn't have the same aquatic life, but actually what it does have is a much bigger variety to keep you interested on a dive trip.
Exactly, and that's what I find as well, because a lot of people ask about wrecks, about caves, about just lovely wall dives from places like the Blue Hole, which is actually 16 meters deep, so pretty much everybody can access it, to swimming out to where the Azure Alps are, to diving at Ras El Hobs, where you've got lovely pinnacles sticking up from the bottom and you can see little schools of barracuda. On the wrecks, you can see nudibranch, which are my favourite because they're all bright colours and they're covering the wrecks pretty much. So what I find here is, although there is less marine life, the marine life that we have here is stunning. And also the landscape itself makes the dive.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing here is that you don't know what you're going to see on that day.
Exactly.
So everything is all, I mean, like we went out diving this morning, first dive, we had 5 really nice size octopus, which was amazing. And then we went and did Cathedral Cave, which is one of my favourite dives on Gozo anyway. Just coming up and surfacing inside the cave is, the colour inside. You take a photo of it, but you can never capture the true colour that's in there.
Exactly. You can try to sing as well in the cave.
I didn't do that. But in terms of, like, I always say to people, I've dived a couple of times in the UK and I am not a UK diver. And I know there are plenty of people who love UK diving and I take nothing away from that. But for me, I am a warm weather diver. I am ideally a board shorts and rash vest diver but I will push to a wetsuit like we are having to at the minute. But, I'm not a dry suit diver. I do like learning and I like diving in warmer climates. And I think it is so reasonable for people to learn to dive. And actually the cost difference between learning to dive in the UK to actually coming on a holiday like we've got our guys on now is not a lot different in comparison. And actually, I think you get much more variety if you came out and learnt to dive in somewhere like Gozo or somewhere like that.
I think so as well. And again, because of the different types of dive sites that we have the bay options, which is good for the first dives, for the certification dives. We have the wall drop-offs, which get divers used to seeing sites with greater depths and practicing their buoyancy. So the fact that there's quite a wide range of spots to see, and the fact that you get the benefit of shore diving and boat diving, kind of gives the divers a little bit more varied experience as opposed to just sort of one type of diving. Yeah,
and I mean, our guys are finishing their open water course in a couple of days' time on a boat dive. So again, you get to do, you're not just diving in an inland lake, for example, like you may be doing in the UK. You don't have to start off in a swimming pool because literally we can walk out of the dive centre here 200 yards and we're in the sea at 3 meters and you don't have to be in a swimming pool. So I think, and sometimes as well, I think people who have maybe done trial dives in a swimming pool, once they actually then come out into the ocean, they find it such a big difference because actually they've lost that security blanket of a swimming pool in a solid floor in, walls around them. And I think actually learning to dive in the sea where you're actually going to be doing your diving, start off where you're going to be doing it really, because it's going to help you in the long run, isn't it?
Exactly. And again, you get used to the conditions, you get used to kind of like the different buoyancy because you'll be in the salt water straight away. And also, it's kind of nice when you're waiting to do your next skill and waiting for your buddies to practice, you can kind of look around and see some fish.
Yeah, rather than a shopping trolley or And I think, in terms of, I think if you're a traveller or you're wanting to go travelling, I think having a scuba diving licence under your belt is such a great thing to have before you go off, to Southeast Asia or Australia or, anywhere like that where the diving is amazing. Because I think if you go to those destinations, I mean, let's be honest, the open water course there's quite a lot of learning involved in it. It's very tiring. People afterwards go, I didn't realise it would be that much or whatever. And I think, what I try and say to people is if you are going to go off to Thailand to a trip, or you are going to go to Australia, or you are going to go travelling for 6 months, get your licence before you go.
Yes.
Because do you really want to spend 3 days of your trip learning to scuba dive when you could already have your licence, get there and just enjoy the amazing sights that are there?
Well, exactly. And especially because with us, you can do the learning beforehand and then come here and just do the actual diving part with obviously a little bit of theory and academics review. But then that means when you do go traveling, you're not restricted or limited, because some places will only let you dive with a certain number of dives or a certain certification level. So it kind of depends where you're going. And then you get to join the really cool trips, like if you want to do a liveaboard.
Yeah.
You will be missing out or maybe not even able to go on the liveaboard if you don't already hold the certification.
And I think, for our trip, like we've planned our trip with enough days that, we've done lots of these trips over here now with our bucket listers, that we give enough time for them to do their open water certification. But if they then decide that they want to continue, they can then go on and finish their advanced off, which of course then they can dive deeper. It gives them a more skill base to go and do it. And pretty much once you've got your advanced certification, you could dive anywhere you want, really, can't you?
Exactly. The 30-meter certification opens much more opportunities. And while a lot of people kind of think, doing the advanced course straight after the open water, that seems like quite a lot. The advanced course actually develops more buoyancy skills, it develops navigation skills, develops skills in different environments such as night diving or search and recovery. And then, yes, you do go a little bit deeper and gain your 30-meter certification. However, because you've only just done your open water, there's no reason why you can't carry on. If anything, it will help build on your skills as opposed to slow down your skill development.
And actually the advance, what I say to people is the advance doesn't have as much learning involved as the open water does. So don't think you're going in doing the same thing exactly again. You do need to just do 5 dives in theory. I mean, let's just talk a little bit about certification, because if we go back 20 years ago when I first started, in the UK, you had 2 choices. You either went down the PADI route or you went down the BZAC route, were your 2 options of learning to scuba dive. If you went and learnt abroad, you would always be going down the PADI route. You don't, only really if you were certifying in the UK would you be on the BZAC route. But things have changed, haven't they, now? A lot of dive centres now on offering the PADI. And I kind of want to just talk to our listeners about, if you see that advertised, don't think of it as a lesser qualification, because that's not the case, is it?
No, not at all. And in fact, that's kind of why we're steering towards the SSI route. The thing I like the most out of everything is the fact that it's flexible. So it allows us to kind of chop and change the course depending on the learning speed of our students, which means that we cater more towards them as opposed to they have to follow a strict and rigid course structure, which may not help their ability and skill development as much. The thing I also like about it is the fact that the e-learning material is very comprehensive. So we can unlock it in advance, it's very high quality. And again, although maybe SSI isn't as well known as PADI, everybody knows the word PADI.
As soon as you say scuba diving, people automatically think of the word PADI, don't they?
Exactly. But although it isn't as well known, they are equivalent certifications. So let's say you start in SSI and you go somewhere else and maybe that dive shop's only PADI, you can carry on your course in PADI, then you can jump back to SSI, you can even swap to other agencies like RAID. So you're not limited in any way. Just because you don't necessarily know the name, it doesn't mean that it's not recognized or it's a lesser course. In fact, we find that our divers benefit more from the course this way, especially because of this flexibility factor.
And let's just look at the route of someone starting off as a beginner to becoming a qualified diver. Obviously, you might have gone on holiday before, and you can go and do a Discover Scuba course, can't you?
Yes.
And just talk about what that is and what that allows you to do, if anything.
So a Discover Scuba course is essentially just a try-dive experience. So it's hop in, do a couple of skills just to get used to the equipment, and then go off for a shallow dive. So while this is a good way to get a taste of what diving is all about, for some people it kind of does the opposite. Instead of encouraging them, maybe it's too fast for them, because it's if the open water course itself is a lot of information within the 2.5 day period. However, this is even more information within an hour to an hour and a half. So we find that either it encourages people and they think, oh yeah, I really want to carry on. Or for some people who really need to know and have a background theory-wise, they need to do further skills practice, they may find it more difficult. However, it is a very good way to see what diving is all about and get a little bit of a taster session.
Yeah, and I think for some people, it's, they might have had sinus problems in the past. They might have ear problems. Like, they're potentially not going to go and book on a 2.5 day course and not know how they're going to react. So it is a good way of getting in the water. But at the end of a Discover Scuba course, you cannot do anything within scuba diving, really, can you? It's just
You can do another Discover Scuba, or you can then go on and sign up to the open water course. The open water course is essentially like your first level certification. So then that allows you to sign up for guided fun dives. Whereas the Discover Scuba means every time you go out again, you need to repeat the skills, and then you can only go on a shallow dive.
Yeah, so
and it's more expensive as well.
Yeah. So the open water course then is a 2.5 day course, sometimes stretched out to 3, depending on where you're doing it. And that will certify you to dive accompanied to 18 meters.
Yes, exactly. By an equally or more qualified buddy to a depth of 18 meters. It essentially means you're an autonomous diver. So you have the basic skills and abilities to keep yourself safe in the water.
And also, just one thing I do want to say to the listeners now is, obviously, once you've got this qualification, it stays with you forever. However, if you do go on holiday or you do go off on another trip and you haven't dived within 6 months, wherever you're going might want to see you do a check dive, don't they? Just to make sure that you remember everything that you knew. But if you haven't dived for 10 years, you don't lose the qualification. You just need to maybe go and do a quick dive shallow just to show that you remember what you're doing.
It's essentially a refresher. Different places have got different policies. We would say a check dive is always invaluable because maybe it's a new location, different conditions, new equipment. So for both divers who are new to the location and also divers who haven't dived in a little while, a shallow dive just helps get you back into it. If it's been, say, maybe up to a year, we would then suggest a refresher, which is just a quick skills review, and then you
hard to get out, isn't it?
Quick skills review, and then you head out for a dive. So again, it's all in terms of safety, making sure you have fun, because once you get back into it, you do have more fun. And making sure our divers are comfortable in the water.
Yeah, it's just about getting your buoyancy stuff and everything
exactly.
again, isn't it? Different kit, different wetsuits, different, you just need to just know what you're doing. So once you've done your open water, you could literally stay as an open water forever and ever.
Yes.
Or you can progress to the next stage, which would be to do your advanced open water, which would then allow you to dive to, depending on agency, but SSI is 30 metres, isn't it?
So SSI would be 30 metres, and again, different agencies will have different names. After the advanced would then be your deep spec to 40 metres, which is the maximum recreational limit.
Yeah. And that's a 2-day course, 5 dives.
Yes, 5 dives. And again, it focuses, we particularly focus on buoyancy again, and we play some fun buoyancy games. You practice, for example, lining up a number of weights and knocking them over with your regulator, swimming through some hoops, practicing different finning techniques and so on. So it's essentially playing with your lungs to move yourself up and down in the water column.
And I think the difference is, you learn, it's the same as driving, isn't it? As soon as you've passed your test, you don't really learn to drive until you actually get out on your own. And actually, when you're doing your open water course, the instructor is pretty much telling you what to do every step of the way. Once you get onto your advanced course and you are just going diving, in essence, you get a bit more time to kind of play around with your kit, understand if I do that, what happens to this, and you just become a better diver straight away, don't you?
Exactly. And it basically allows you to kind of figure it out, because while we provide a lot of training and we help with hints and tips, especially with buoyancy, once you have all the hints and tips, you kind of just need to practice.
Yeah, it is exactly like driving a car, isn't it? It's like, if I do this, what happens? If I do that, that happens. And that's kind of how you become a better diver, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, it's, a lot of people go and do their open water course and then don't actually, and this is why we give a couple of days after the course when we do this trip, is so people can either progress onto their advanced, or they can just book to go out fun diving.
Exactly.
And I think, that's, because there are lots of different laws within diving. And every country has their own laws. Like the Maldives, I learnt the other day that they've got a depth of 30 metres and you can't dive over 30 metres. In Malta, you have to be accompanied on a dive. You can't just turn up once you've got your advanced or your open water, your advanced. You can't just turn up and get some kit and go out diving. You need to be accompanied by a dive master or above to then go out diving, don't you?
Yes, and that's the thing as well. Even though I am an instructor trainer, I wouldn't just rock up somewhere and say, give me some tanks, let's go diving. I want somebody who is experienced and who knows the area, who can show me the cool things, and who also knows the aspects we would need to follow to keep ourselves safe as well. Yeah,
exactly. I think, and again, you're going to get so much more out of your diving by going accompanied with somebody who knows that area than you are if you just rocked up with a guidebook and had the maps, which are pretty basic in most terms. Like, they're not really a map, are they?
Not all of them are that helpful, no.
And then once you've done your advance, then you're qualified for 30 metres. You could do a speciality and go to 40, but actually, unless you're probably wreck diving, you're never going to go to those depths anyway, really, are you? There's not a great deal there apart from wrecks at those sort of depths.
Again, the thing is, it depends. Some places have wrecks, some places have swim-throughs. Like, for example, one of my favourite dive sites is at 40, but my other favourite dive site, you can easily access up to 30 metres, and there's some cool little swim-throughs. But again, that's then when you want to decide on what you want to specialise in. Do you want to go to 40 metres, or do you want to maybe do a photography specialty? Do you want to learn more about night diving? So kind of after the advanced course, that's then after you've sampled each of the different 5 dives, you can kind of see where your interests lie a bit more, and then do a specialty to learn more about it.
Yeah, perfect. And after that then, what is the progression after that? Because that's just the start really from a dive journey, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Then if you wanted to go into a professional career, it would be doing your first aid, an O2 provider, and your rescue course, which is awesome. It's loads of fun. Even if you don't want to become a professional, you basically run through loads of scenarios. Apart from being loads of fun, it makes you a safer diver. And then it would be moving on to your dive master. And you can do kind of like an internship style dive master over a number of months. Or you can do it a little bit quicker depending on your experience. And then the progression would be to move up to instructor.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, I know people who've gone down the photography, videography route. But again, they would mainly be dive masters already, because you do need the experience beforehand and then get the camera and focus on that more. And then you can even go into technical diving.
Yeah, that's a completely different...
completely different world.
A different world at that point. I think, most people are going to be recreational divers. And, when I went and did my dive master, it was the most learning I've ever done.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a lot of learning. And I didn't want to go down... Well, I still don't, even though you keep trying to convince me to do my instructor's course, Rachel. I really enjoy diving, and I don't want it to ever become a job. That's why I'm resisting every time. Although the thought of having 3 weeks out here diving would be quite nice, and do my instructors. But I think for me, the dive master just turned me into the best diver I could be at that point. Because I think once you've done your dive master, there is no more learning really within diving, is there? Your instructor's course is more about teaching not exactly. About the diving.
In that respect, yes, the dive master's that kind of like the foundation, and then the instructor course, you're learning how to teach people who have never dived before.
Yeah. But actually, and that's the reason why I wanted to do it, was just to know more and more about the diving rather than, but I've resisted for years to not do my instructors, and I'm still fighting it. But
maybe we'll convince you this year.
Maybe this year you might convince me. But so I think from having that skill of being a diver, like this year, I went and did the Chile and Easter Island trip. And when we were on Easter Island, you can go diving. And there were me, two of our guests were already certified divers. The others went and did a try dive. But again, where they've sunk the Moy head, that's it, like 20 meters. So you couldn't do that on a
try dive.
Try dive. You had to do it on a, you had to be a certified diver. Of course, we didn't have time out there for anyone to certify. So it was amazing to go and get that photo of me sat in front of the Moy head. It was perfect. And then I was in Israel and did some diving there. And then I've been to the Maldives, did some diving there. So by having that certification, it's meant that
it opens up more
opportunities. And actually, if you vote, like when we were on Easter Island, we only had half a day free. But actually, it was like, well, I can just go and book a dive now. I can just walk down there and go diving because I had that piece of paper. It just makes such a difference when you are traveling around the world.
Yes, exactly. And now everything's digital and online, so you don't even need the paper.
You don't even need the paper
just
anymore.
Need your phone.
That card with the horrible photo on the back that they drag at the end. So in terms of, just give us a quick, why should people come to Gozo and learn to dive in Gozo?
So in my opinion, Gozo has the ideal conditions to learn how to dive. Again, we've got the lovely shallow bays, which means that you can use these for the confined or the skills sessions. And they're a very gradual slope, so divers can ease themselves into it. Then on the flip side, they also have the other spots where you do have the wall drop-offs, you do have the blue hole, and you have other spots which are a little bit more advanced and will benefit their training and development in the long run. Apart from that, it's stunning views. So it's literally everywhere you turn, there's this amazing bright blue water. And we are known for having sometimes even 50, 60 plus meter visibility. And it's super close. You jump on a plane, 2-3 hours and you're here.
Yeah.
So you don't have to fly halfway across the world. And again, the level and the quality of training in Malta and Gozo is actually quite high. So
I would say it was very high.
Yeah.
No, not quite. It's very high.
Very high. So you kind of know what you're getting already. It's a lot more accessible compared to other locations. So in terms of gaining your certification before traveling, it's easier to do here.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to consider about Gozo is, you have a lovely sunny climate for most of the year, but also because it's such a small island and it is shore diving, if the weather's coming in bad from one direction, we can just jump in the trucks and very quickly go to the other side of the island.
Exactly.
You don't really ever get weathered out and there's no diving today because
No.
It's such a small island. You kind of turn up somewhere and go, no, that's a bit choppy. Everyone back in the truck, 3 miles across the other side of the island. Oh, look, this is perfect here. So in that respect, it also makes it a very good place to learn to dive. But also, if you are listening to this and you are already a diver, then come and check it out as a destination as well. Because,
100%.
I keep coming back and back. I've done Cathedral Cave so many times now, but it's just such an amazing dive. We'll end up doing the Blue Hole again at some point.
Oh,
again,
100%.
It's
Saturday, probably.
Saturday, yeah. It's an amazing dive. And, and the thing is, you always do it differently, don't you? Like, you always see different things. You drop down, you go out, you go straight ahead. You drop down, you go out, you turn left. You drop down, you go out, you turn right.
Exactly. There's so many routes.
There are so many routes and options and obviously, everyone remembers the classic Azure window, which unfortunately is no longer there, but which is unfortunate for Gozo. But for diving, the fact that it's not there is actually so much better because the dive
It's better.
It's better now. The swim throughs now, where that huge lump of rock just came crashing down, it's created a massive boulder field underneath, which is added to the marine life.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and it's made the dive itself a lot more interesting and more fun.
And just quickly as well, talk us through children learning, because we do get quite a lot of inquiries at the Bucket List Company saying, can I bring my children on that one? What is the rules for children learning to dive? But also, what's your opinion on the right age for a child to do their open water?
So I think, it depends. For younger children, like 8 or 9 year olds, we have like a bubble maker, scuba rangers type experience, which is where they just hop in water, maximum depth usually about 2 meters, and they play around with their equipment and go for a swim. And that kind of introduces them to diving. Open water can be done from 10 years old and above. And obviously you've got different kids with different, like when I was a 10-year-old, I was tiny.
Yeah.
Probably
You're
at
still
the age
tiny,
of,
Rachel.
Okay. I've grown a little bit since then. Probably at 10, I wouldn't have been able to complete the full course. But in that respect, then there's scuba diver, which is half of the open water course, which certifies you to dive to 12 meters, but you have to dive with a dive professional. So there's that little kind of added safety margin in that too. But again, kids from the age of 10 and above can learn to scuba dive. And to be honest with you, the younger you learn, the easier it is for them.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing taking kids diving and just seeing the big smile on their face as soon as they come up, because everything is awesome.
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, like I have a 10-year-old and I don't think he is quite ready yet from the theory side of things. The practical side of things, I think he would nail. It would be the understanding of the theory of diving. And I've sort of said to him that I think like when you get to about 12, I think then you might have more of an understanding to be able to complete it, I think. But I think, it's a perfect way of a family coming out here and doing this as a holiday and doing because
100%.
There's a lot of families out there don't want to go and sit on a beach the whole time. They want to be doing something, and this is something they can go and do as a family. And then for their next family holiday, they go to the Maldives or they go, somewhere else and go scuba diving. Like when they've all done it together, if everyone loves it, then it's something you're going to continue. And I think finally, we'll just finish on the fact that you don't need any kit either, do you?
No. We've got, again, we rent full equipment and all our kit is pretty much brand new. In fact, what we do is as soon as something starts to look a little bit like it might need replacing, we just replace it. We have black plate and wings. We have new standard jacket style BCs and a wide range of sizes of equipment that can cater to different people, because not everybody can fit into the same equipment. And the number one thing is also that you're comfortable in what you're wearing. Otherwise, you're not going to enjoy it. Yeah,
and if you are traveling around the world, and you just decide to go scuba diving, you don't need to have any kit either, do you? Because wherever you're going, all right, it might not all be up to the spec that yours is up to here. And I've dived in some pretty dodgy kit sometimes, but you don't need to have your own kit. You don't need to transport it with you. If you're going on holiday somewhere and you just fancy going diving for a couple of days, you might want to take, if you've got a computer, you might want to take a mask and stuff like that. But, everything else, you can get when you get there.
Exactly.
So I think, it becomes once you have learned, it is quite a cheap activity to go and do when you're away as well then, isn't it? It's not overly expensive.
No, exactly. The thing is, because you can rent it, it is easier and more accessible.
Yeah.
And in general, most places you go, the rental fees aren't huge. If you are obviously planning on doing it a lot, then yes, 100%, it's much better to buy your own equipment.
Yeah. If you're going out on a dive holiday and you're constantly going on a dive holiday,
like yourself.
I brought my kit out with me here. Yes, all right, you have to have another bag on the plane to take the kit out because it was going to take you over your weight limit otherwise. But if you are diving for a full week and you dive regularly, it is nice to have your own kit, but it's not necessarily something you need to have.
No, exactly.
And obviously when you do have your own kit, like happened to me today, something breaks and it costs you a load of money and you've got to buy a new one. But Rachel, when we have new people on the podcast, we always like to ask them, as we finish, what is on Rachel's bucket list still left to do?
So I actually am dying to go to the Maldives and see manta rays, because every single time I have the opportunity to see a manta ray, something happens and I can't go on the trip. So that is definitely what I want to do next.
Well, that is... I didn't get to see a manta ray when I was out there either, or a whale shark. So that still stays on. That still stays on my bucket list for next time. What about other travel destinations? Anywhere else that's on your list that you haven't been to yet?
Oh God, there's just so many locations, and the thing is, it's a variety of dive holidays and not dive holidays. Like I would love to go to Raja Ampat and do a liverboard there, because I've still never done a liverboard. I would love to go traveling around South America in a camper van. That's a dream.
Nice.
But there's so many locations I'd want to visit. The list is endless. It's just finding the time to do it.
Well, I mean, I think we all know that problem. I think it's a time and a money thing. Like, we get it all the time. Like, if people could just retire and they would just continue to book onto our trips, is what people say to us. But it's unfortunately not as easy as that sometimes. Well, Rachel, thanks ever so much for coming onto the podcast today. It's been great to speak with you. If anyone's got any questions on diving, then please do just email in and we'll answer away. It is a great skill to go and have. It's a great hobby to take up, and one that, if you are really super keen on traveling, then it's one that you can take with you around the world as well. Like I say, we run these Gozo trips all the time. We run several a year, and they're always enjoyed by everyone. Everyone has such a lovely time, and it's not all about learning. There's lovely restaurants on Gozo. There's lovely bars, like where we are in the dive centre now. The hotels above us, the restaurants in the middle, the dive centre's underneath. It's a 150 metre, 200 metre walk down to the beach, and you have to pass the ice cream shop on the way as well. So there is plenty here for everyone. And like I said, if you have got a family, it could be with older teenagers, it could be a really good option for you as well for a trip for the future. So I'll put links to the Gozo trip in the show notes for this podcast. And if you've got any questions, please do send us an email. But this is definitely a nice short trip. It's an 8-day trip, so it's nice and short. And you can add it in as your extra trip for the year. We generally run them in kind of June and September, as the water's starting to get nice and warm and not too choppy. So, like I say, if you've got any questions, please do ask. But until next week, thanks ever so much for listening, and I'll speak to you then. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.